I've got a friend, a former Marine Corps pilot. His name is Paul D. Young. Well, let's just call him Young. He used to tell me stories about his time in VMA 225, stationed at Cherry Point, North Carolina. Back then, his squadron only had A-4 Skyhawks, 8 years. Those were the workhorses. Then, the day they got A-6 Intruders, he said, that was a real step up. In the fall of '68, VMA AW 225 got orders to go on a trip to Da Nang's, Republic of South Vietnam. That's when the squadron realized they needed a name that showed their spirit and their grit. They finally settled on Vikings, proving its worth over the jungles of Vietnam. The A-6 Intruder swiftly became the backbone of naval air attack. Capable of striking day or night in any weather, its durability remains unmatched. And Grumman's legendary Iron Works answered that call, forging not just an aircraft, but a legend of resilience. The A-6 Intruder. Its story unfolds across decades, from the desperate needs of war to the bittersweet farewell of a respected veteran. To some eyes, maybe she wasn't a classic beauty. No swept wings like the Phantom, no predatory sleekness like the Tomcat. The Intruder had a purposeful look. Lieutenant Pete Rasnick.
When I first started flying the A-6, is about when Top Gun came out. And so when I got my wings, everybody wanted to be an F-14 pilot. When I got here, I have to admit, I was a little bit disappointed initially before I flew the airplane because I saw these Tomcats taking off. I quickly, though, changed my mind when I learned about the mission of the A-6 and learned about its capabilities. Flying low-level, all-weather, night, dropping all different types of ordnance. I quickly realized that this was the mission that I thought I was cut out to do.
A blunt, rounded nose housing a powerful radar, a broad fuselage, sturdy, straight wings designed for lift, not just speed, and that distinctive side-by-side cockpit where pilot and bombardier navigator sat like partners in a long-haul truck, ready to face whatever the mission threw at them. But ask the men who flew her, the men who maintained her, the men who trusted their lives to it, and you'll hear a different story. You'll hear respect. You'll hear admiration. You might even hear something akin to love.
There's always been a lot of discussion, I think, about the virtues of a very cheap air-to-ground tactical airplane as opposed to the much more expensive all-weather, all-purpose, multi-mission aircraft such as the A-6 is. I think we proved without question in Southeast Asia the value and the requirement for a more sophisticated, more capable aircraft than what perhaps the cheapest version we can put on a carrier deck would provide. We proved it nightly from all the carriers in the 7th Fleet when A-6s were often the only tactical aircraft flying over North Vietnam, and that includes the Air Force as well.
The aircraft is it's a super airplane.
The story of the Intruder begins in the mid-1950s, a time when the Cold War demanded ever-increasing capabilities. The United States Navy recognized a critical gap.
A-6 started because the Marine Corps wanted a close air support aircraft. After Korea, they wanted a jet airplane that could drop bombs in close to troops. Well, the Navy wanted an all-weather attack airplane. And so, putting the two together, Grumman came up with this design, which was cutting edge when it was designed in the middle 1950s. It had 2 radars, a search and a track, and it had a computer. Now, this was long before software had even been invented.
The call went out, and Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation stepped up. Based in Bethpage, Long Island, Grumman was already renowned as the Iron Works, builders of rugged, dependable naval aircraft like the F-4F Wildcat, F-6F Hellcat. Their answer was designated the YA-2F-1, making its first flight on April 19, 1960. soon redesignated the A-6 Intruder. It was unlike anything flying off a carrier deck at the time.
And all this stuff was state-of-the-art when it was designed. And by the time it got to the fleet in the mid-1960s, it still had a lot of bugs in it. And so the radar had about a 4-hour mean time between failure, and the computer was somewhat less, about 3. And when it worked, when the avionics shops could keep this stuff working, it was an all-weather attack bomber, state of the art.
Right.
When they couldn't, it was a wonderful dive bomber that carried about twice the load of an A4 and can carry up to 15,000 pounds ordnance. And so this was tremendous load.
Its airframe was sturdy, designed for stability and load carrying, powered by 2 reliable Pratt & Whitney J52 turbojet engines nestled under the wing roots. But the true revolution lay within its bulbous nose and complex cockpit. The heart of the Intruder was its groundbreaking avionics suite, the digital integrated attack and navigation equipment, universally known as Diane. In an age before microprocessors and GPS were commonplace, Diane was a marvel. It integrated multiple systems: a search radar to scan the area, a track radar to lock onto specific targets, an air data computer processing speed and altitude, and an inertial navigation system to keep track of the aircraft's position. This sophisticated integration allowed the 2-man crew, seated side by side, to perform miracles.
The crew sat side by side. The pilot sat on the left side. Actually, the seat was about 2 inches higher and 2 inches further forward than the BN. And the BN had the search radar screen in front of him, which was a round screen. And then it had a flexible hood that came out, collapsible for safety purposes, that shielded the screen from extraneous light during the day.
Right.
Just as a practical matter, he even used it at night, and so they never took the hood, they call it a radar hood, out.
Okay.
Now, the way the system worked was that the computer would help. He would type in a waypoint or a target that long to the computer.
Crucially, Diane computed highly accurate bomb release points, transforming night and all-weather bombing from guesswork into a science. Grumman's design genius extended to the cockpit layout. The crew typically worked heads down, intensely focused on the radar scopes and system controls. To aid this, Grumman employed clever ergonomics decades ahead of their time. Different knobs and switches were given distinct shapes, allowing them to identify controls by touch in the darkened cockpit, minimizing the need to look away from critical displays. Furthermore, the pilot's seat was slightly higher and offset to the left, granting the pilot, who handled the actual flying, a better view forward and, importantly, past them to the right. It was a cockpit designed for intense, prolonged concentration and seamless crew coordination. This unique capability, the power to precisely strike targets, deep behind enemy lines, at any time, in any weather, was a game changer. It was so advanced, so potent, that the Navy initially harbored reservations about deploying the Intruder into the burgeoning conflict in Southeast Asia. The fear was that if an Intruder was shot down, its technological secrets could fall into Soviet hands. However, the harsh realities and escalating demands of the Vietnam War soon forced the Navy's hand. The Intruder, the all-weather warrior, was going into the fight. Flying into Vietnam, an extremely fierce battlefield more than half a century ago, meant entering the crucible for A-6 Intruder crews. It meant facing one of the most formidable integrated air defense systems ever created, a lethal network of anti-aircraft artillery, surface-to-air missiles, and enemy fighters. To make matters worse, the Sunday Punchers were flying into hell with more than just enemy fire to worry about. Blistering heat and suffocating humidity didn't just drain the men, they wreaked havoc on the intruder's sensitive electronics and radar systems. But if the skies were unforgiving, the maps were no better. Some of the early charts of Vietnam were so inaccurate, they missed their marks by 3 to 4 miles. Still, the deadliest threat didn't come from the enemy. It came from their own bomb racks, mechanical flaws that could, and did, ignite the bombs while they were still strapped under the wings. It was a nightmare that had to be stopped, fast. Engineers scrambled and delivered a solution, a new bomb ejection system. But the fix came too late for 3 crews. In July of '65, Donald B. Becker, now a rear admiral, was forced to eject after a bomb exploded beneath his wing. Like many intruder pilots in Vietnam, he never made it back over the beach.
I told Don Eaton, my bomber navigator, I said, we're going to have to get out. And I said, eject, slapped his leg, and he ejected, and I followed 2 seconds thereafter. We watched the airplane. He floated over this way. He was a light young guy, 135 pounds. I was 200 pounds. And he floated down like a leaf, and I floated down like a ton of rocks. When I looked down, the men were coming out with their rifles, the soldiers ready to capture me. So as soon as I hit the ground, which was in a rice paddy area, I got rid of my parachute, got rid of my helmet, and looked up the hill where Don was still coming, grassy hill, because the enemy was coming from this way. I turned around and looked this way, and there was a big jungle mountain. So I had to run through the rice paddy into the jungle area, and I found an animal den of some sort, a tiger hole or something, and crawled in that and waited until sunset, until nightfall, and then I evaded up the hill. But there were people all around looking. I could hear people within 20 or 50 feet of me. With your life, he is the one that packs your parachute. You never appreciate him until you have to use it. Also the AME, they call them, the aviation structural mechanic, who is responsible for the seat to operate properly. So you never appreciate those people until you have to use it. And then we came back and we bought each of the parachute packer. We had to find out who packed the parachute, and we had to buy him a bottle of whatever he drank.
On the night of July 27, 1969, VMA AW225 pilot, Captain Paul Young, and Bombardier Navigator, First Lieutenant Robert Bob Borrell, were assigned mission number 123.
Numbers again, please.
Call sign manual 77.
77, that's departure left turn 090 with the 2 miles radar vectors. Departure control 3059, 1000.
Roger, after takeoff left turn 090 with 2 nautical miles, Vulcan code 3, code 1000, contact departure on 305.9.
Anchor rendezvous 611 is clear in the anchor.
Their job was to take a fully armed A-6A nearly 100 miles west of Da Nang into Laos and patrol the Owl route, popularly known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Through it, they transported an estimated 400 tons of supplies per week to Viet Cong guerrillas and other communist forces in the south.
Approach tower loud and clear.
Takeoff checklist, the winds are spread lock, the center console is flush, and we got no flag on my side, check yours.
No flag on inside.
Okay, and the trim is set for takeoff, 6 degrees, nose up, 0 rudder, 0 wing trim, flaps indicate down like a takeoff, and stabilizers. Head to the slash, look good, a good visual check on my slide, check yours.
A good slide on this side.
Okay, and the fuel's indicating 15, correction, slide less than 15, indicating about 14.5.
Facility transmitting on guard, you have a very loud squeal blocking your entire transmission out.
Though the airstrike did not destroy any major enemy assets such as trucks or artillery pieces, it served as a stark reminder to the communist invaders that, even under the cover of darkness and in the midst of a rainstorm, they could not escape the reach of the intruders. The experiences shared by those who served with the intruder during this period paint a vivid portrait of the machine. One person involved in the war said that his Vietnam War buddies had nothing but good things to say about the A-6 Intruder. Many agreed that the intruder was as tough and simple as a sledgehammer. and had an almost magical ability to get a crew home in almost any condition or weather. This ruggedness wasn't just folklore. It was a core characteristic born from its Grumman ironworks heritage. Tales abound of intruders returning to their carriers battered and bruised, riddled with shrapnel, canopy cracked, systems failing, sometimes flying on a single engine after the other was knocked out by enemy fire. Yet, time and again, they brought their crews back. A mechanic who spent years at the Grumman plant building new intruders and overhauling battle-damaged ones confirmed its reputation. A brute of an aircraft and built like a tank, simple and rugged construction throughout. He recalled that once the factory had to be evacuated when a worker discovered an unexploded 37mm round still lodged in the tail section of a plane. One can imagine the terrible impact that plane endured flying back with an enemy bullet embedded in its structure.
Some of the flak they put up was just awesome. Of course, Sam's coming down on you.
Yeah, they take off and go above you and then come back down.
They come back down on you.
All right.
And so, you're popping chaff and you're trying to go a little lower. And of course, the Earth's down there. And if you even kiss that baby, you're not coming back.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I was really lucky. I had 1,600 hours in A6s and loved every one of them.
Oh,
and even the times when I was pretty scared.
All right. Well, did you ever on any of those missions come back and have to count holes in your wings and tail?
A few times.
Okay. Any records there that you kept numbers of? No? You don't care?
I was lucky. There weren't very many holes.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing.
Friends had a lot more than I did.
Well,
Its ability to place bombs on target under the most challenging conditions was second to none, and the ordnance it could carry was staggering. With a maximum payload capacity of 18,000 pounds distributed across 5 hardpoints, the Intruder could haul a devastating amount of firepower. Mk-82 500-pound bombs were a staple, often carried in large numbers on multiple ejector racks and triple ejector racks. One Marine serving in VMA AW-224 aboard the USS Coral Sea remembers helping arming the A-6s and assembling many of the tail fin assemblies for the 750-pound Mk-5 bombs. The Intruder's forte was low-level penetration, getting down in the weeds, as the aviators called it, flying mere hundreds of feet above the terrain, using the contours of the land to mask their approach from radar. They would navigate through darkness and weather to their targets, popping up only momentarily to release their ordnance before diving back to the relative safety of low altitude. Yet, surviving the flight over land was only half the ordeal. The return trip ended with the nerve-wracking challenge of landing back on the aircraft carrier, especially at night or in bad weather. As one person described it, getting feet wet, flying back over the ocean, led to a critical sequence. First, they had to find the moving ship in the vast sea. Then, they needed to perfectly align the aircraft using a special set of lights on the carrier called the meatball. Finally, they had to snag one of the thick arresting cables on the deck with the plane's tail hook, catching the wire. Only when the tail hook caught a wire, bringing the jet to a sudden stop on the moving flight deck, could the crew finally start to relax. It's worth remembering, as one veteran pointed out, that even after cheating death, these men couldn't even have a drink to calm their nerves because alcohol wasn't allowed on Navy ships. That's why the respect for what the A-6 crews endured in Vietnam remains so high. Backtracking a bit to talk about my friend, Young completed his year-long tour of duty. With just over 2 combat missions, he departed Vietnam in January 1970 and returned stateside. Reuniting with his wife Judy, he served more than 20 years in the Marine Corps, graduating naval, test pilot school, and eventually commanding his own squadron. Borlaing completed his tour of duty in February 1970 and returned to MIAS Cherry Point. The Grumman A-6 jam, full, and dominate the electromagnetic spectrum. All of these modifications were made in response to electronic warfare. When it came to defending strike packages and gathering intelligence from Vietnam to Afghanistan, the Prowler became an important piece of equipment. As a result of its legendary potency, there were rumors that Prowler jamming caused toasters to pop in Turkey during the Libyan attacks. Additionally, ground forces in Afghanistan praised Prowler crews that provided life-saving electronic cover as their heroes and friends. It is without a doubt deserving of the nickname New Wings for a Seasoned Warrior. Despite the fleet being augmented with sleek new jets throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, the veteran A-6 Tram Intruder refused to disappear. Its exceptional combination of big payload, extended range, and precision in all weather conditions continued to be of great value. Over Lebanon in 1983, A-6Es provided the sweet payback that Marines on the ground had been craving after being subjected to pounding for several months earlier. Under the cover of night, intruders carried out attacks deep into hostile territory during Operation El Dorado Canyon, which was carried out against Libya in the year 1986. The elderly warrior once again demonstrated its worth in the final big conflict, which took place in 1991 and was called Desert Storm. In the middle of stealth fighters and smart bombs, Navy and Marine A-6Es continuously bombarded Iraqi targets, including bridges, airfields, and Scud launchers. Their tram systems were able to pierce through the smoke and darkness. Even at that time, when its service was drawing to a close, it continued to exemplify the old pilot's adage, where he would remark, "Carry a heavier load, penetrate deeper." One KC-10 flight engineer whose father flew intruders stated, "People say it's an ugly plane, but I think it's the best looking." Even younger generations recognized its distinctive personality. However, the passage of time and the harsh physical conditions of carrier operations will eventually do their work. After decades of jarring landings, violent launches, and low-level pounding, the signs started to become apparent. The fatigue of the wings became a significant worry, as was the case with its Prowler sibling. The aging warrior was going to be given new wings, according to the plans. There was interference from fate, politics, and budgets. A storm of cost overruns and technical difficulties ultimately led to the cancellation of the futuristic A-12 Avenger II, which was supposed to be the stealthy successor to the Intruder. The project was ultimately scrapped in 1991. All of a sudden, there was no one to choose from. When the United States Navy was confronted with budget shortages following the end of the Cold War, it made a decision that continues to sting many veterans. It decided to completely retire the Intruder fleet without a dedicated successor. Multi-purpose fighters, like as the FA-18 Hornet and modified F-14s, would be able to fulfill the essential duty of deep strike, all-weather aircraft of the future. The level of outrage was substantial. It was regretted by critics that the beam counters were able to dismantle an essential capacity. They argued that multi-role jets were unable to completely recreate the special qualities that the Intruder possessed. Having a dedicated ground attack aircraft has been the bread and butter of the Navy, one person claimed, while another person bluntly juxtaposed the cost and perceived limitations of newer aircraft such as the F-35 to the proven workhorse that is being retired. Even though it had been demonstrated to be valuable over several decades, a range, payload, and tough all-weather capacity that had been perfected over the course of decades was being lost, leaving a capability gap that planners may still be struggling with today. After being taken out of service on February 28, 1997, the final A-6E Intruders of the Navy were destroyed. A period of time had come to an end. Only the A-6B Prowler, which is a descendant of the Intruder and was designed for electronic warfare, was able to carry the silhouette of the Intruder into the 21st century. This was a final and long-serving echo of the renowned Grumman design. So, what is the enduring legacy when we speak of the Grumman A-6 Intruder? Certainly, it wasn't the fastest or most agile aircraft on the carrier deck. It wasn't designed for the fleeting glory of air combat victories. But more than anything, the Intruder was revolutionary. It ushered in the era of true, reliable, all-weather, day or night precision attack capability from the sea. And its legacy extends beyond metal and technology. It's the human story, the incredible courage, skill, and dedication of the thousands of individuals who flew, maintained, and supported it. Stories of intense camaraderie, profound sacrifice, and gut-wrenching close calls. All these are woven into the fabric of the Intruder legend. The deep rumble of the A-6 Intruder may have faded from the world's flight decks, but its legend lives on in the memories of those who served with it, in the annals of naval aviation history, and in the deep respect it still commands. Thank you for joining us in exploring the story of the legendary A-6 Intruder. Please share your memories or thoughts about this incredible aircraft in the comment section below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating aviation stories. We'll see you in the next one.